It's about time I take the leap. And as I'm in the closing stages of completing my next album, I thought it was about time I tell you what my plan is, my strategy for releasing this music. So I make my music in the context of albums for many reasons, but let's just say they are creative process reasons. Setting a deadline on a 3-month project allows for the tide to come in and the tide to go out. It's much less grindy than the same amount of music every single week. So thinking of completing, say, 10 to 12 tracks over a 3-month period as a chunk is much more effective to get stuff over the line than a track every week. That kind of a deadline works much better. The other benefit is that it allows you to make a consistent sound across that music rather than just going from one thing to another, which is a particular struggle that I have. I like so many different things that I can go all over the place. And then the final thing is that I really enjoy making albums anyway, as I like telling a story through multiple different tracks of an album. I like putting albums together. I like having a collection of tracks that have a shape. I listen to music in the context of albums all the time. I rarely listen to playlists. I'm very much an album listener. Call me old-fashioned. That's the way I like to listen to music. Having said that, though, in terms of the release of the music, if we separate the concerns about the releasing of the music from the creative process, I don't think that an artist in my position, because essentially I'm starting from ground zero, I'm going to come up with a new artist name. Got no idea what it is just yet, but I'm going to come up with a new artist name. So I'm starting from ground zero with this project. An artist in that position, I don't think it's necessarily the best idea to just simply release an album into the world. Of course, you can do that if that's what you want to do. But given that music is the thing that will attract people to the music, so yes, it is the product, it is the end product, but it's the promotional item that will attract people to you as an artist. It makes much more sense to release either single tracks off the album one by one, or maybe a couple of tracks if they work together as a duo, or 3 tracks together, to stagger the release of the tracks on an album. And that's even though on the album that I'm writing now, it's very much a story that I'm telling. I mean, if I had a large audience already and I was able to release it any way that I wanted, and I could be sure that that audience would listen to it as I wanted them to listen to it, I would probably want to release all of the tracks on this album as just one track, right? Where it was literally a listening experience from beginning to end. But even though that's what I would like it to be, because I'm thinking about the release separate to the creation of the thing, I know that I want to release these tracks separately. But I was thinking about this, and there is in the past an artist, a different artist, a novelist in fact, who I'm using as a model for doing this, because I do want to tell a story through my music, even though I'm releasing these tracks separately. And the person I'm talking about is Charles Dickens. And I don't know if you knew this, but most of his novels, I'm not sure all of them, but most of his novels were actually released episodically, one chapter at a time. You will notice in a lot of Charles Dickens novels that at the end of each chapter there's a cliffhanger. That's because they were released one chapter at a time. And in fact, this became the way that Victorian novels were released, chapter by chapter. And I knew this from a long, long time ago, and it just kind of stuck in my head as being a cool way to release music, particularly in a situation where each track leads on one from the other on an album. Because the album I'm making at the moment is about a person, I'm just going to call it me, but it doesn't have to be me, but a person who at the start of the album, they get frustrated with themselves because they feel that they have these problems and they don't know where they come from. And when they go to sleep, they keep on meeting their dark side, their shadow. This shadow comes upon them. Anyway, this shadow talks to them I think we're on about track 3 now. This shadow talks to them and saying, come with me into the dream, into dreams, into the land of dreams. And I will show you through dreams and memories of your dreams, the reasons that you have me, the reasons that I am here, because I am you. I am your shadow, and you need to accept your shadow in order to become whole again. So it's kind of like a psychological, therapeutic kind of thing, which has sort of fantastical elements to it. And it's got elements of my past and memories and all of that kind of thing. But it's really telling a specific story. And of course, not every album has to do this, but this one is, and I'm enjoying that at the moment. Actually, as a side note, probably my next album would be much less of a story like this, but this one is certainly like that. And so I think this album is going to be an ideal vehicle for trying out this kind of episodic storytelling thing through music. So that's where I'm at with this idea at the moment. And what I do have to do is figure out exactly what I'm going to do around the music. I mean, I guess the simplest way of doing this would simply be to create artwork that reflects this story and just start releasing the tracks episodically. But I don't just want to do that. I mean, I may well start by doing that in the first place, simply because I like to lower the bar and keep things as simple as possible for myself at the beginning while I figure out all the various things you've got to do. Because obviously I've not done this for a long time, so there's quite a lot I have to figure out. But probably what I'm going to do is some free writing, some thinking, some planning around, well, what would be the ideal situation? What videos might I create? What other content, I hate that word, but anyway, what other content, what other ways of delivering this story, of enhancing this story, of enhancing this experience would I create in the ideal situation? So if I could do anything, then what might it be to create this kind of experience around the release of this album episodically? And then from that go, okay, what can I do now? So obviously I have the ideal situation that I'm working towards over time. Maybe I'll get there in 6 albums time or something. So I've got the ideal situation. And from that ideal situation, I can then go, all right, here is what I can do right now with the time and the resources that I have. So that's my plan at the moment, is to use the example of Charles Dickens and the way that he wrote and released his novels to release this next album, to come up with a master plan of the ideal situation, but then peel off a very small part of it and work towards that over time with the successive release of the tracks of the various albums I'll be writing over the next year. Of course, before I do any of that, I've got to finish the bloody thing and make sure it's not a complete disaster, which is proving to be somewhat difficult given my current life situation. But I'm getting there and I'm confident it will be at least passable. And something else I'm going to do very soon is a mailbag episode here on the Mondayland feed. So if you have any questions at all about anything I've been sharing in any of the podcasts, whether it be about the creative process, about the album writing process, about what I've talked about today, about releasing music, about music business, about art versus craft, perfectionism, talent, any questions at all, then please email me, mike@makemusicyourlife.com, and I'll add it to the hopper for the various different questions I'm going to answer on that mailbag episode. And with all that said, I'm going to go and take the leap.